Hi, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're
Been
so
organised a little while, and thanks for the having me here and reminding me because it's the last few months have kind of gone a bit of a whirlwind.
yeah, and I can't wait to talk about that that and why things have been so busy for you. But let's just start off with if you can please give an introduction to yourself, your business, and what you sell.
Yeah, sure. My name is Sarah to my parents, and I'm the founder of Cub and Pudding, which is now an adult wear clothing brand. So I design all the prints for all the designs myself, but I started as a unisex kids wear brand. Hence the name is kind of a bit kind of slightly kiddie, slightly kooky. But yeah, that's what I began as, and then I kind of evolved to just selling adult wear only.
Oh, amazing. So I would love to find out actually about how and why you changed from children's to adult clothing. But let's start right at the beginning first, if that's okay. So when and why did you start Cub and Pudding? Let's start there.
Yeah, so I was still working at a bank. So I was the PA to the CEO of a bank in the city, so very different life, very corporate. I live in London. And I'd gone back after my second child, who Pudding is referring to her, after maternity leave. And I had just felt that slump of, oh my God, am I actually going to be here until I retire? And it just started to become more and more of this kind of weight on my shoulders. The job itself was fine. I worked, everyone there was lovely, and it wasn't because I was miserable there. I just felt really, really unfulfilled. I could kind of do the job with my eyes closed, which now in hindsight, sometimes I think, oh my gosh, that would be amazing to be able to have such a stress-free life. Yeah, I just felt so unfulfilled, and also importantly, there was just no aspect of creativity in my life. Like going back before that, a while before I'd had kids, I had been a features writer at a magazine, and long story being made redundant. So I'd ended up at a bank on a maternity contract, and 10 years later, I was still there. So I never intended to be in this kind of corporate world so long, but it was just easy to be there. It was a nice job. And to be honest, it was really well paid after being in such a creative industry for a while. I was able to do things I could never afford to do when I was there. And then I actually ended up I went with one of my fellow PAs to a talk one day, and I know Holly Tucker was there, and Steph from Don't Buy Me Flowers, and it was just a talk about women's careers and kind of trying to inspire us. And in the goodie bag that day when we went home was a card of a life coach, and I remember sitting here literally behind me and getting this card out and was just like, maybe I should just email. And I just sent this lady an email and just essentially said, I just feel really, really lost. I don't know what I want to do with my career, my life, but I need some direction. I need someone to help me find a path that I'm going to be happy with and feel fulfilled with. Yeah, and long story, we met up. She happened to be quite local, and got on really well with her. And we did that classic thing of kind of putting everything down on paper, just brain dumping all the things that you're passionate about, all the things that, in your whole life, down to relationships, love, friendship, money, and then the things that do excite you. And from there, we kind of narrowed down that what I really, really got enjoyment out of was, sounds a bit sort of silly now, was dressing my kids in really cool clothes. And I had got to the point where I was finding it hard to find good clothes for my son, who was at that point about 5, that were really just fun and quirky and didn't fall into that stereotype for boys where it was just diggers and dinosaurs and brown and beige. And I kind of just almost decided there on the spot, I was like, why don't I just try and design some things for him myself? I have no design background. I wasn't arty at school or anything. And I do remember Caroline, my coach at the time, saying, you don't have to do the prints yourself. You can kind of delegate that out. But I really, really felt, for me, I think because that creative element was missing in my life, I really felt like I needed to do that. It wasn't just about sort of designing clothes or working with someone and giving them ideas and them doing all the patterns. I really needed it to come all from me, for me to feel that kind of sense of self-satisfaction. And yeah, it just kind of spiraled from there. I stayed working, I was still working at the bank. So yeah, eventually found a factory and just started company while I was at the bank, and was just running it simultaneously. Very, very small, very, very, all my customers at the beginning were just friends. And yeah, that was 2019, that's sort of the start of it, that I launched. And then I had handed in my notice. So I left on December the 25th, 2019, and went full time in the business January 2020. I just kind of took the leap. I decided pretty much in September. I wasn't, full disclosure, I wasn't making lots of money at all from Cub and Pudding. It wasn't necessarily even, I was doing that well. I just was enjoying it, and I just thought, actually, life's too short. My boss had left, my 10 years boss, and I'd got a new boss. Didn't really, he was fine, but I wasn't willing to kind of start a whole new relationship there, because when you work as a PA, it's quite, quite important one-to-one. And I just kind of decided, I was on 3 months' notice, and just quit, essentially, which, was luckily with the support of my husband, who didn't kind of, tell me what on earth are you doing, because I was kind of the bigger breadwinner in the house at that point. Corporate pays quite well. So yeah, I just thought, sod it, and quit, and then here we are.
Wow, that's amazing. That's such a lot. I'm trying to think where to
Yeah,
begin
sorry,
with
there's
this.
so
Well,
much trying to
no,
condense
it's amazing.
into.
What I am interested in, and not to be too boring, because obviously this podcast actually started in 2020, so we talked a lot about the pandemic, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But how was it? So you just quit your corporate job to do Cub and Pudding full time, and then obviously the pandemic came like a few months later. Did
Yeah.
that change anything about your business, or what was that like?
It was, I think, because I was kind of naive and I hadn't been running the business that long. So I think my expectations were really low. So I remember a benchmark figure in my head at the beginning that I needed to make per month to kind of pay bills and things. And when I look back now, it was a very low amount. So I kind of was almost like a little bit naive, like, oh, it should be fine. And actually, I think depending on your business, and I think, I had friends, a lot of small business friends as well at that point, it didn't go too badly, because I think a lot of people were stuck at home, bored, being paid, and not necessarily working, depending on what their jobs were. I had a few friends doing that because they couldn't go into the office, they were still being paid. And I think it was almost a good time for people to just shop. And because of the clothes I was designing, that's exactly when it happened, when the kind of the spin to starting adult wear happened at that point, when people started saying, actually, I'd really like some of those clothes for me. I'm working at home. I kind of want to look smartish, but also be comfy on all of these Zoom meetings that I'm having. So it worked out fairly well. I started growing from there. I mean, it wasn't, by any means any kind of overnight success, and I was raking all the money, but it started building, going in the right direction. So it was enough to keep me positive and focused, where I didn't think, oh my God, what have I done? And I think I was just so full of kind of enthusiasm for working for myself after all those years, and not being in that corporate environment, and having the freedom, that I was, again, probably naive and full of energy to just do everything that I possibly could to grow at that point. So it didn't impact me negatively. I think it probably, who knows if it would have been different. I think probably a lot of us maybe think we don't know what life would have looked like if there hadn't been a pandemic. I'm not sure. It might have been better or worse. But people stuck at home, still money to burn, they're saving money by not going out, not going on holiday. It actually wasn't bad at all for me. So maybe it was a good thing after all.
Oh, that's really good to hear. And, I think you're right that one thing that, maybe I'm only speaking to myself, but I'm sure that one thing that people always spend money on if they have it is their kids.
They were definitely, there was that element, but I think it then became a little bit more like, I want some of that for me, and actually I'd rather buy that for me than my kids. And we'll maybe talk about this in a bit, but it did get harder for me with the kids wear, because I make such small volumes, and it's expensive, where understandably a lot of people don't want to spend money on children's wear over a certain price point, and it got harder for me to push that and market that, much as that's where my heart was, and that's where it all started. So when I did eventually let go of that, it was quite bittersweet. I just realized that financially it didn't make as much sense, sadly, for me to keep pushing that so hard, when I could see the adult wear growing and the requests coming in for that, and the enthusiasm for that growing. And it was just, sadly, something I had to let go of eventually. But I'm glad it started that way.
Yeah. And we'll definitely talk about that a bit more. But one initial question I have is, did you find that an impact of the pandemic, did things get more expensive, I guess is what I'm wondering, because you mentioned about the cost of, and you're right, because I will spend more on clothes myself than I will on my kids. As
Yeah,
much as I spent a lot of money on my kids, it always feels like with clothes, they're only gonna be in them so long, and I
exactly.
totally get that. So was there a cost impact during the pandemic?
Well, I didn't notice it straight away, to be honest. I feel like it's been kind of incremental. So I didn't feel like it happened overnight. I think it then came as a result, a year later, people are catching up with themselves and, people are trying to recover from that period depending on who they were. The factories, for example, yeah, that I worked with in Portugal, they had to shut. So um, I don't think I noticed any cost impact initially. I think a lot of for me has been Brexit related as well, and working with Europe and overseas, where that's kind of got harder. But it was a slow burn. I think by 2021, it was then into play. And I think because none of us knew how long this pandemic was going to last, is this going to be a 1 month thing? And I think it all was a little bit at the beginning, this sort of naive, and obviously we were worried about COVID, what on earth's happening, people were dying. So I think it was a sort of weird whirlwind, wasn't it? Maybe for the first 6 months or so, until we realised, okay, this might be in this for longer than we thought. So I think it was just a case of everyone's kept going as much as they can initially, and then the knock-on effect happened a bit later, where people were trying to recover from spells where they'd had to shut longer than they anticipated, perhaps, or the sales for people really dropped off a cliff, and they had to make up for it by putting their own costs up, which then obviously had that domino effect for other people, sadly.
Looking back, there was a lot going on, wasn't there?
A lot, and then homeschooling, obviously. That's I've put that. It's post traumatic stress from all of that. I try not to think about that, because that was on top of everything. Having both kids at home as well, which so many of us went through, was pretty painful. And my husband works for himself as well, so we were both trying to work from here with the kids. Yeah, I think you just sometimes, when you're in the thick of it, you just get on with it. And then it's only when you look back and reflect that you kind of go, oh my gosh, that was kind of crazy, wasn't it? But yeah, I think you just are proactive and just have to do what you have to do.
Yeah, definitely, and I think you're right. It's only when you look back and you just can't almost believe that we all
No,
and yeah, well, we
crazy.
won't dwell on that
No,
bit.
no, no, exactly.
Um, so I'm going to talk more. I'd love to talk more about pivoting from children's clothes to adults, because I do find that fascinating. But before we go there, I'm really interested. So you mentioned that you wanted to be involved in the design because that was something, you wanted to express your creativity, but you had no design experience. So how did you? Yeah, I guess the basic question is, how did you do it? How did you manage to design such beautiful prints without having any design experience?
So I enrolled on it's a London College of Fashion. We did a course remotely over a few weekends, where it was learning the basics of fashion manufacturing. So just understanding what a tech pack is, and just trying to grasp some sort of understanding there. And then I also did another little course of an evening over a few weeks, where it was designing children's wear, but it was more about pattern making and being creative there. But it gave me some ideas of how people work. And I think because I had certain brands that I loved for the children, that I kind of was inspired by, so I knew what kind of print and pattern I would be making myself. And I have quite a naive style. It's not very detailed and delicate designs in terms of very intricate drawing, which I wouldn't be capable of at all. I just don't have the skills, because I knew it'd be fairly naive and fun and kind of quite playful. I just kind of went in and just bought paints and pens and charcoals and books, and just started mucking around basically. And I think I had the luxury, luckily, because I was in a full-time job when this all started happening behind the scenes. A huge luxury for me was I wasn't up against any deadline. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I have to open the business tomorrow, this has to be ready. I was doing this all evenings and weekends and on the sly at work. So I was kind of gradually trying to acquire all this knowledge and skills from. I used to go to the British Library quite a lot, actually, which I love. And they've got an amazing kind of business centre there, an archive, and you can go and like research papers where they kind of give you ideas on like fashion trends and market research. So I spent time there essentially, and just tried to inhale as much knowledge and inspiration as I could get. I'm lucky that I live in London and I've got a wealth of kind of museums and archives and things here. And there was I forgot the name. I've actually just thought now. There was a great place in London, and they do kind of very short 2-hour things in the evening. And I would go there after work, where it would be like, how to use Adobe Illustrator for drawing, because I knew obviously I would need some grasp of drawing on screen as well. So I just was doing little bits and bobs like that. And those 2-hour courses was kind of like £25 here, £30 there. So it didn't feel like I was having to go and, join a huge master's at a university and spend 3 years of my life and lots of thousands of pounds. So I was probably just very naive about what I could do and just enthusiastic. I was just really, really hungry to do it and to be creative and sort of release myself from this really, really corporate world. So yeah, I was just finding all these different ways to kind of learn, essentially.
No, that's great. And do you know what? It doesn't sound to me like you were naive at all, because you were definitely proactively going out there and learning and researching and upskilling yourself where you needed to. So I think it sounds like you were doing, all of the things. And sort of it sounds like you knew what you needed to learn and where you might, need more skills and more experience. So I think it sounds like a really good way of doing it. And as you say, it was so nice that you had the luxury of not having to rush to do all of it as well.
That's a huge thing. I was still being paid a sort of job. It wasn't, that I don't take that for granted at all. That was really helpful, and I worked decent hours. I wasn't ever stuck in the office till really late, that kind of thing. So yeah, it was a nice way to do it. I build it up slowly until I got to a point where I felt like I was ready to do it. Yeah, I was lucky. I don't often think back to that point when you're at this point in the
Yeah.
business. Yeah, it's quite nice to look back and think, oh, that was nice.
And was there anything that you did need to get help on? So you mentioned tech packs earlier, and I do have some knowledge of what a tech pack is, and to my eyes anyway, it looks fairly complicated. Was that something you were able to do yourself, or were you needing to get support on some of these
I did
things?
get support with those. And by chance, one of my nursery mum friends, it's funny how you don't actually talk about your jobs. And she happens to work in sportswear. We just got talking. And so she would do my tech packs for me, which was brilliant. I did pay her, obviously, but it just helped because then we would just meet in a cafe. I would kind of talk about the kind of thing I was trying to do. And then she would turn it into a reality that the factory could actually use to make a piece of clothing. So yeah, I did. That was the one thing I did get help with. There's no way to do that. And I don't actually work with tech packs anymore because I've been in my factory so long. But I think you'll find, a lot of factories don't really want to go near you at the beginning necessarily, unless you've got that tech pack. So it kind of is, shows an element of seriousness that you know what you're doing, you have an idea of what you want to do. So yeah, she was a bit of a godsend at the beginning.
So for anyone who doesn't know what a tech pack is, it just occurred to me not everyone will have heard the phrase. It's basically a document, and tell me if I describe this badly, that everything a manufacturer needs in order to take your design and make it into a product. So it has the patterns, the designs, the fabric, and a lot more detail than that. Is that a fair way of describing it?
No, it's a perfect way, down to little, the stitching, the type of stitching on the cuffs, and every single sort of measurement essentially that comes with the garment. So where exactly you're putting the depth of the collar, and that's it. Yes, it's every taking a piece of garment and unfolding, unraveling it, and how to create that. Essentially, and within that you normally have it graded. So you make a sample, for example, for the kids, I tended to do age 2, just kind of mid-range, and then you get, that's also what I needed someone to help me with actually. You find somebody who is able to take that initial measurement for the age 2 and then grade it so that it goes either up or down, down to baby size all the way up to age 10, and that's so that the factory can take every single measurement per size and has got that all graded specifically, because obviously each bit moves up incrementally depending on the age. So that was the second thing, yes, I needed someone to do for me, which was grading, and I found a lady to do that for me as well.
That makes sense. I didn't think about that. And that actually, and I know we're jumping around a little bit, but when it comes to adult clothes, that must be really tricky. So grading
Oh,
for adult
yeah,
sizing.
I'm still adjusting my sizing all the time. Literally just this week we're playing around again. And I think, and it's a good thing. It's good to be flexible because feedback comes back, and I do my very best to incorporate that because, I don't want to feel like any item is excluded for someone that might have a different body shape. But it is really, really hard. I think anyone would know if you go to any one of 5 very well-known high street brands and pick up for example, size 10 top for women, they are all like, a t-shirt, for example, they're all going to fit so differently. And I think there's no standardization. There probably should be, but it is hard. I've learned to try and adapt and be as flexible as possible ongoing. And you can be too rigid when it comes to adult sizing because the feedback, depending on how you want something to fit, it's good to incorporate that from customers and what they're saying.
It is really hard though, because as you say, even the bigger brands, you can even buy 2 pieces of clothing from the same large brand and they could have the same size on the label, but it doesn't mean that they're going to fit you the same. And obviously everyone's body type and shape is so different. I think like for the whole industry, unless it's standardized somehow, I think this is just going to be something that's ongoing.
I think so, and I think it's just a case of, isn't it, making it easy for people to kind of change things so they can size swap, that make it hard for them. And again, taking feedback if I'm hearing the same comment over and over about, for example, one of my dresses, the bust was just coming up too tight on the bigger sizes, so I've added twice more width there. Because obviously the cut of each item is very different. If something is more fitted, it's even harder. So I tend to do looser clothes just by virtue of that's what I prefer, and I think it's comfier. But it's really, really tricky, and definitely comparably, children's wear is so much easier for that. I barely got, I don't know, a couple of returns in my whole time with Cub and Pudding. If that's never ever any returns ever, and then obviously that's probably the biggest downer for adult wear is just the returns, because you just can't, or you can't get it right for everybody shape, much as I'd love to. We're all different shapes and sizes, and we all have different wants and requirements. I think it's not even as simple as, with different shapes. It's just someone might love it being longer on their arms, and someone might hate that. It's really, really hard. And then add in colouring and what suits someone's complexion, and it's like, oh gosh, it's really tricky. So I think it's always going to be an issue trying to get the sizing within, but I think all you can do is offer as much guidance as possible, and I'm always trying to do that. Like, please just get in contact, and if someone says I'm a size 12 on the top and 16 on the bottom, I can kind of help give them advice, knowing my own products and what they can try. I think that's probably the only thing you can do is just talk to the brand. Yeah.
I definitely think so. And also, I think there's always going to be a culture as well where there will always be people who will order things, try them on, send them back, rather than go into a shop. That's always going to be a thing as well, isn't it? That you might order. I mean, there were definitely places, especially if I'm buying somewhere that I've never shopped from, I probably would buy 2 sizes because I'm sort of in between or wouldn't know which is right. And I guess with a clothing brand, there's always going to be part of that. But it's great when you were saying about how you can adapt what you do based on feedback. So do you still produce in quite small batches? Is that how that's possible for you?
Exactly that. I produce in such small batches that I'm kind of reordering every couple of months or so. So when I go back for a reorder, I can then say, actually, when we do this, can we just adjust this? So I've got another batch of my pink and my black hopscotch dresses coming in, and I was able to say that, can we just add in? I've also added in another size that I wasn't doing before because people have been asking for that. And that shift over the last couple of years has been interesting for me too, because I've seen different sizes become more popular. So for me, I actually didn't used to sell many of the bigger sizes. The size large, extra large, I really didn't. It was always the sort of smaller sizes, hence I didn't have as many available. And now I've seen a shift where extra small barely sells. I'm not even bothering doing it with a couple of my products, but the sort of 3XL size on top has become a lot more popular. And I'm pleased about that, because I had to try and explain to only a couple of customers that because I produce in such small batches, obviously if I have 10 sizes, there's no way my factory are going to let me know, that they're like, it's not worth their while to make 2 size small because across so many sizes. So I had to make the decision, if I'm producing such a small amount, I can only do 5 sizes at a max because it becomes too minimal per size that my factory won't let me do it. And because I didn't ever sell many of those bigger sizes, I was like, it just wasn't clever of me to put too much stock there. So I had to make sure that I produced more of the small and medium. Medium's always been the popular one, personally. But yeah, I've seen a shift for that recently, which is really interesting.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And it sounds as well like your factory are really flexible, which is
They've been
great.
really good to me. I think, it helps we've had a long working relationship. We were first in contact in 2018. I visited them twice, which is really nice. It's run by 2 women, which I love. And it's outside Porto, which is a really nice region in Portugal. So yeah, they've been really, I think, it's just the legacy of working together and, pay on time, that kind of thing. I think, there's just a trust there and in all honesty, there's been a couple of moments where I've had to go to them and say, I've had a down spell with Cub and Pudding, and I've been like, I can't pay, I don't know how to do this. I've had an awful couple of months for sales. I'm freaking out, and I've had something in production, and they've been really, really kind to me, and we've worked out a plan where we've just staggered a payment more, or I've been able to push back production dates so that the cost is further ahead in the distance. But I think it's just really key just being honest with the fact, if you've got a good working relationship and just being really honest and open with them if you're having any kind of issues. I think we've just learned to kind of trust each other. So yeah, I really value them for sure.
And how did you find them? So again, because you had no experience in this industry,
Mm.
how did you manage to find such a great factory?
Yeah, that was one of the trickiest things, because I found that other clothing brands, whether they be kids or adult wear, it seemed to me that most of them had been started by someone who was in that industry already and had either quit or they'd come from that background. So they had that kind of little black book of contacts, and I didn't. And I spent a lot of time, contacting people abroad and in the UK, and not getting anywhere. People just didn't respond to me. I had a huge spreadsheet of all the people I contacted and followed up with, and I just didn't hear from. Obviously, I think because I'm a new brand, they don't know me, and I only wanted small orders, and I guess to a lot of people, it doesn't look very appealing. And again, it was just a chance thing that Caroline, my coach I was working with then, she had another client who was doing sportswear, and she said, "Oh, she's working with this factory in Portugal. Do you want me to just put you in contact?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, great." So she kindly shared her contact details, and it just so happened that we worked well together. And yeah, ever since, although I now work with another factory as well, doing my knitwear. But yeah, I was very lucky that they got me from the start, and I think they were interested and excited to do work with me and do this kind of thing. They kind of were doing slightly more traditional work, I think. Yeah, it was luck. It was luck. They could have been awful, but it was pure luck, thankfully. And yeah, I just clung on to them ever since.
I guess luck, but also I think it's good, it was obviously an introduction from someone you knew, and I think it's just good to talk. So yes, there is some luck, but I also think there's an element of if you talk about what you're doing and what you're looking for and what you need, you've got more chance of finding someone that can help. So I think there's some of that in it as well.
That's very true. Yes. Yeah, that is true. Yeah. So it was fortuitous. Yeah. And I'm thankful for that. Yeah, that it worked out that way. And because, there is an element of unspoken, I don't know what the word is, where you do not share your contact details for your factory. I've discovered that. There's been a couple of instances over the years, and people are very funny about it. And I understand from one point of view, because especially if you spent a lot of time trying to find a factory, and then you found them and they're brilliant, and then someone might come along, and I have had that. I've been on the receiving end of that, where someone says, "Oh, I'm looking for a factory. Can you give me your details?" And I understand, people think, "Well, actually, you might want to sort of try a little bit harder than that." But I also think, well, we're all small businesses, we're in it together. We'll probably doing things slightly differently. What does it matter if we actually share the contact details? And it's nice karma. But it seems to be the unspoken thing that I found at the beginning was like, do not tell anyone what factory you're working with. It's gold dust. It has to be kept very close to your chest. So I knew, obviously, no one was going to normally just tell me. So being able to find my factory kind of through a sort of a friend of a friend helped, but otherwise I think I would have got stuck because of that kind of closed bookness that I encountered back then. Anyway, I think it hopefully has changed a little bit now.
Yeah, I get the impression it is changing a little bit,
Yeah,
but people who'd rather keep things to themselves, and that's what I'm not saying one way's better than the other.
no, you can understand both sides, but I think it's nice just to maybe just
It
share.
yeah, it's nice just if we can all help each other. I think
Yeah,
there's really something really nice about being able to put someone in contact with someone that's gonna be helpful to them or, yeah, make connections. I just think that's a nice
yeah.
thing to be able to do.
Exactly, exactly. I'm not reinventing the wheel. I think all of us are doing. We're doing clothing. It's, I think we've not kind of got a prototype of a top secret kind of invention that I've got behind the scenes. So I think it can't hurt really. But yeah, I'm very grateful that she did share with me.
Oh, that's really good. And let's come back a little bit to talking about pivoting from children's clothes to
Mm.
adults' clothes. So you mentioned you were getting feedback from customers saying, "I'd love to have that in my size. I'd like to be able to buy that for myself." So when you were hearing that a lot, was that what got you thinking, "Okay, maybe it's a good idea to try this?"
Yeah, there's a lot of talk of matching big and little. That seemed very popular, especially with sort of younger children. Obviously, if you've got older kids, you'll probably know they don't want to stand next to their mum wearing the same thing. But when they're, when you have own control of dressing them when they're 2 and 3, and there was definitely a very popular trend. I'm not sure because I'm out of that world a little bit now if that still exists of like let's all be matching, let's all have matching t-shirts and matching pajamas. So that was I was getting customers saying, oh, have you thought about doing that for me too? Because then we can match. And I started doing t-shirts probably during the pandemic. I was working with a fashion mentor then, who I still kind of talk to now, and she was great. And she encouraged me to do some t-shirts. That's the first time I've ever done it where I had to source blank. Initially, I'd done kids t-shirt with my factory, which was great and lovely pencil t-shirts I still love. But it's quite hard with t-shirts because obviously it's still the minimum that you're having to commit to and the time it takes. So for me to design the t-shirt from scratch still took 3 to 4 months to produce. Whereas I found a great supplier who had like lovely organic cotton t-shirts and a really gorgeous kind of fit and cut and variety after looking for ages. And I can just order, 3 t-shirts if I want, and they'll be delivered tomorrow. And I found the screen printer who is local. And yeah, basically started doing a couple of designs, just to add to the collection while things were a bit sticky during the pandemic and wasn't sure what was happening with the factory. And then, so that was a really easy way for me to, well, I'll do some adult ones at the same time because I wasn't committing to kind of a huge production, where I'm having to do double, essentially, adult and kids. And again, like I said, the timeline where it's going to take me 3 or 4 months to actually get it out into the world. So I just dabbled with that. I have my cereal t-shirt and I had a couple of others back then. And they just did quite well. And it just sowed the seed where I just thought maybe then I had this sweatshirt, the line dots, launching for the kids. Thought maybe I just start that and do an adult version as well. And that item has been like on sale continuously in my collection ever since. I've never taken it out of the range because it's just done really well. So I think it was just experimenting, listening to feedback. Enough of it was coming in that I thought I'll try it, but I'll try it that way where it felt safer for me to do it without committing too much money and time and energy, and then grow. And then I think people knowing that they could buy an adult piece of clothing from the website then sort of open the doors a bit for me to add to that side as well. It wasn't kind of, it's quite hard sometimes just landing a new product in front of someone that isn't kind of part of the theme of the collection you've already been building. I found that with homeware, which is a whole other topic where people kind of like, but you sell clothes, hang on a sec, why is there like a notebook there too? That I kind of, it's not as seamless. And I think also when you're marketing as well, as I grew to do both, that got kind of more complicated because you realize that you're marketing to 2 different audiences. Marketing to adults and marketing for kids wear is different. So yeah, that's how it started and how it grew. And then the time came for me to stop add the kids wear and the following year.
Oh, thank you for sharing all of that. And so when you stopped doing the kids wear completely, has
Mm.
that made it simpler in terms of your marketing and talking about your brand?
Yeah, I felt so, because at first I felt really conflicted. I felt like I was kind of cheating on my brand because the whole reason I started was unisex kids wear, and then for me to decide to end that did feel really sad. I did, and my daughter still talks about it. She said, "Why do you not do kids wear anymore?" She's luckily still in remnants of the kids wear because she's 8, and I went up to 10 with some of the things. Um, but yeah, it did get easier because it's just me doing everything, and from down to my Instagram and my newsletter. When you're trying to do marketing messaging for kids wear, and it's really versatile for when you're potty training, and then the next thing you're suddenly talking about all this dress works well for seasons, and you can layer it up, and it's got pockets, and it's just a different mindset. But what I did like and what I love now is I felt like it opened a new wave of customers for me that weren't all parents, because I felt like I didn't want to necessarily just be pigeonholed selling just to parents. And it's nice now that I don't have to just concentrate on talking about kids all the time and being a mom and being a dad. So yeah, anyone can buy my adult wear, and you don't just have to be a parent. Obviously, you can buy kids wear if you're not, but tended to be mostly parents I was selling to before. So it just sort of simplified it. And also I felt broadened who I could sell to too at the same time. So it kind of made sense, really, inevitably.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think, as you say, it makes your messaging clearer if you're just talking to one group of
Yeah,
people.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I eventually kind of made peace with it. And yeah, I think it did help me in the long run just to kind of simplify it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is so interesting though, because as you say, it's done both, I guess, niche down your audience, but also expanded it because it's also, as you say, parents and non-parents.
Exactly. And
So
it's some of my smaller sizes for sure. You can get 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, and teens upwards. They can wear them as well. So there's still an element where I can, and I find that more exciting now. Anyway, now my kids are bigger. I'm seeing older kids in my clothes is more a sense of like satisfaction, because, like we said, I know how hard it is to please older kids, and they've got more of a say in what they want to wear. So actually that's a really nice kind of tick box too. I can still kind of sell to some kids if I want to, and I know customers who've still got they've got their kids in their sweatshirts as well. I had that in the shop recently where the mum and the daughter, which was really nice when I did a pop-up shop, came in. The daughter was about 12, and they basically agreed they were going to timeshare one of my sweatshirts. So the mum said, "I will buy it." And she said, "Well, I want it." She said, "Right, it's going to live in my wardrobe." And it was just really nice seeing these two different generations who both wanted the sweatshirt and they were going to share it. And then, I had a lady in her 70s come in and buy it a couple of days later. So it really had gone full kind of circle. And so, yeah, opening up that audience has been really nice.
and that also leads me on really seamlessly, almost if we planned it, to talking about shops. So,
Ah,
um,
yes.
yeah. So let's talk about physical shops and
Mm.
how that's been and where that's going.
Yeah, so it's crazy. So as soon as we finish the podcast, I am off to the shop that I got the keys to last Thursday to paint it. So yeah, I started thinking about the shop last year. It was sort of just on my mind. I think because I'm in London, as I've said before, and it's just happened to be that I'd say a third of my audience are in London. I don't really necessarily know how that's happened. I guess just people talk, etc. And I'd done a few local markets and things, and I just thought it could be quite nice to have a shop, bonkers as it may sound. Also, because I'm clothing, and what we've talked about is the concept of having somewhere that someone can come and see the fabrics and try them on and feel them and see the colours in real life has felt more and more important as Cub and Pudding has grown more, especially this year. Um, I felt like I'd kind of missed out. Like I'd love to say, look, you can come here and try it on. And I did a pop-up shop last June as my first pop-up, where I was actually in my own shop for a couple of weeks, and I could took over the whole space in Southeast London, and it went well, and I really enjoyed it. I just really enjoyed it. I'm lucky enough that I get to share a studio space with my husband. We've never, as soon as the pandemic finished, we actually signed the lease during the pandemic. We have a lovely workspace building about a mile and a half away. It's an amazing community, and we've had a studio there since then. So I've never worked from home, and I've been really lucky to work there. But the last kind of year or so, I felt particularly lonely, just me with my computer, and I was missing the kind of interaction with people and from doing that pop up. Also, what really struck me is you get to see people's reaction immediately to your clothes. You get to see the feedback you're getting on an item where maybe you weren't so sure about it, but actually in real life you can see people's reaction, and it was just really really interesting to me, and to have conversations with people in real life about the clothes and the brand. So yeah, it sowed the seed in my head, and then I did another pop up in November, same sort of area, and then I did one a couple of months ago for 2 whole months. It's the longest I've done it in the same area as well. And I've been started looking from the beginning of this year essentially for a space, and it's quite hard. I think you need to be in with like the local high street crowd, because it's not like Rightmove, they don't tend to pop up on there. And then long story being is that someone got in contact saying she was moving out of her space only about 6 weeks ago, and I went to look at it and kind of loved it and just decided to do it really. I know people think I'm crazy, and that's where the naysayers come in and saying, oh my gosh, opening a shop is such a big commitment, and it is. But I am someone that when I get something in my head, I know I won't be able to get it out again. And I just think, you can only try, and I would always be asking myself, like, what would have happened if I'd opened that shop? So yeah, I'm excited. I'm opening hopefully Saturday the 19th of October. I've got 2 weeks to turn it around. I've got someone in there at the moment painting the outside, ripping out shelves and sinks. It was a florist before, and it's a really cool kind of kooky space. It's got a front section and then like a middle section, and then what importantly for me, which none of the others had, it has a storage downstairs, so I can take all my stock that's currently living in my studio and put it there and work from one place. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm all emotions. I'm excited. I'm really nervous. I'm anxious. I wake up in the mornings and think, oh my god, what have I done? And then by the end of the day, when I'm there, I'm like, this is amazing, but also, oh my god. But I'm obviously been able to, lucky enough to open at this point in the year. So I'm hoping I'll get a good sort of run up to Christmas and being there, and try and really maximise being there as much as I can in that Christmas period before, as everyone keeps telling me, especially the locals, how hideous January is on the high street. But so I think if I was opening January, February, it might be kind of a slightly different vibe. So I'm hoping that I can make the most of it with workshops and things. But yeah, I'm excited to have my name up the door. I mean, that feels like a kind of, it's scary, and but it feels like the next chapter for me. I feel like I've outgrown just sitting in a studio on my own with a computer, and I just want to be around people who are interacting with my clothes and my designs, and yeah, I can only try. So we'll see. But yeah.
It's so exciting, and it's all obviously very new. But what I think would be lovely is to do maybe a follow up in 6 months,
Yeah.
all about opening a shop. Because I'm not going to go into the details now of ask you lots of questions about it, because it is so new and probably quite overwhelming and busy, and there's lots to do. But it would be lovely to catch up again and find out sort of the ins and outs of how you do it. Because you're my very first guest who's opened a shop.
Oh wow! Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to. I hope I don't come back in 6 months and I'm sort of aged 40 years, like, oh, it's the worst thing ever. But yeah, no, I'd love to, because like anything, it's always nice to hear from other people and how they've done it. So yeah, I'll be here. And fingers crossed, it's all fairly positive. But yeah, I'm excited, but yeah, trepidatious at the same time. I think it's a good balance to have the fear and excitement together.
Yeah, I think that's a really healthy place to be, actually, because I think if it was just one or the other, yeah,
Yeah,
they need to balance each other out,
they
definitely.
do. They need a healthy dose of both, and then definitely both there.
And where is the shop? Because once this episode is released, I've just been looking up at my schedule.
Ooh.
You will be open, so whereabouts is the shop?
Well, yes, it's in Forest Hill in South East London. So the station, Forest Hill Station, is just up the road. And the road I'm on, it's really special actually, because it's Dartmouth Road in Forest Hill. It's purely indie shops. There's not one chain shop there. And there's a really, really lovely community. There's lots of really gorgeous independent shops down there. So there's lots to do in the area too, if anyone wants to come visit. But yeah, I've already, from doing a pop-up, 2 pop-ups on exactly the same road, which has been nice. So this year and last, I've already kind of felt that sense of community that exists there, and there definitely is a really nice vibe for supporting small businesses in the area. So yeah, it's just up the road for me. I used to live around the corner, so it feels like, familiar and comforting in terms of, I know the area. I think if a space had come up in another part of London, I wouldn't have been able to do it, because I just think you need to know your kind of demographic on the doorstep, and it is my customers are around there. So yeah, it's a good spot for us to, so come and visit.
Yeah, that's really exciting, and I think it makes sense as well that your customers are local because, I mean, there's definitely a drive to support local businesses, and I think that, indie clothes shops in particular, I do think that a lot of the people who come through the doors, apart from the people who've travelled to come there, and there will always be people who travel, a lot of them are local people who want to support this lovely shop that's in their neighbourhood.
Definitely, definitely. And what's nice is when I've done pop-ups before, I've been there for 2 weeks. You have someone come in, and of course, like it in markets with the same thing where they say, "Oh, I'll come back," and then life happens and you've gone, and they've forgotten who you were, and there's no sign on the window anymore. So the chance to actually, have that visibility permanently on a high street where someone might be in a rush on a Sunday morning, but they can come back for sure, and I'm still going to be there, 3 weeks later, 2 months later, is really nice and reassuring. And like you said, I think there's just genuine interest in small businesses and going into a space. And people, I had a guy when I was painting last week, he knocked on the window and he said, "Oh, what's happened to the lady who was here before? We had a beautiful shop." And then when I said it was me, he kind of said, "Oh, thank God, like, we live around the corner. We just really didn't want it to be, really faceless, soulless Poundland. We just really hoped it would be anyone that's an indie." And I think there's genuine hope and support for that on your high street. You want it to feel like it's cared for and loved, and not just a money making huge corporate brand where they don't really
And it is exciting when new brands move in. There's
care.
near on the road I live on, there's this tiny little stretch of maybe 3 or 4 shop fronts, and one of them's
Oh,
empty. I'm so excited to see what it's going to I don't know what it's going to be. I really hope I'm not disappointed. I'm so genuinely excited to see what will it
same,
be? Just it's
totally.
exciting when
It's
new things
lovely.
move in.
And you just think, yeah, go you. Like I live in Crystal Palace,
Yeah.
and there's a stretch where 3 or 4 have just opened up recently, and I'm so chuffed for them. And there's a sweet shop, and there's it's completely different, a yoga, and I just and now knowing what goes into running a business, and obviously now more a shop, you're just really rooting for them. Like, please, everyone, like, go there, please, and tell everyone, like, make sure, keep it busy. Please, just always just want to see loads of people in there as much as possible, because you want them to survive, you want them to make it. Essentially, that's what's important.
Definitely, and it's so exciting. And on that note, I hope everyone who's in the area or passing through Forest Hill can come and have a look at your shop. I'll definitely come and see your
Yeah,
shop.
yeah, come say
I
hi.
would love to visit. Yeah, I would love to. I really like that part. I used to live in that part of London, so
Oh
yeah,
dear,
I'll have to
it's
have
a
a
good one. I'm
nostalgic
biased, but
trip
yeah,
back.
it's lovely. It's lovely.
So the final question I have for you, sir, is one that I ask every podcast guest, and that is, what would your number one piece of advice be for other product creators?
Oh, I had to think about this because so many things. I think actually it's maybe as simple as just looking after yourself and your own well-being. My husband runs his own business, but he is client-facing, and so often, I kind of jab at him and say, "You're so lucky," because with a product business, there's so many cogs in the wheel. There's so many things, so many elements to get that product to your customer. For that to happen, and I think when you're in a business and you're doing a vast share of it, I found that as things have got busier, which is great, I've suffered in terms of my own well-being and my own mental health, because I'm doing so much. And I think it's just not being afraid to delegate when you might be afraid of it. I was so worried about cash flow that I always thought, I have to do everything myself. I can't afford any help. I have to do everything. And then there comes a point where, life happens. You can't always be doing everything yourself. We had a holiday this year, and we had to plan to be away, essentially. And that was where my hand was forced finally to get someone to help me with my customer emails and things. And it's been the best thing I did. I haven't looked back, and I don't have to think about that anymore. So I think it's just looking after yourself to the point where if there's something that really you don't need to do anymore that is causing you maybe a bit of stress or a bit of angst. And for me, it was dealing with customer emails that were coming in on a Saturday, and I didn't want to look at it, but then it was in my mind, and Now someone does all that for me. I don't need to see it, and it's actually made my life a lot easier. And there's only one you. Your brand is you, your business. So you just need to, I think, just be careful and look after yourself and your own well-being as things hopefully grow and the business gets bigger. Be clever about how you spend your time and what you need help with, and how you can best kind of allow yourself to take some time away and not feel guilty about it, and just look after yourself.
That's such good advice, thank you. Because 'cause you're right, I think running a business, whatever you do, it can take over your life if you allow it to, because there's never
Completely.
enough hours in the day, there's
No,
always something that needs to be
no,
done.
no. You're selling online. It is literally 24/7, and internationally, people contact you all times of the day, and it's your baby. You're passionate about it. You want to do your best, but yeah, it's just finding the balance to making sure your sanity, your mental health is in check, and yeah, making good decisions in terms of delegating things that might help you serve your business better.
Oh, well, thank you so much, and thank you for
You're
everything that you've
welcome.
shared.
Oh, thank you so much. It's really nice to chat.
It's been lovely.
So nice. Yeah, it's been a while. So yeah, like I said, it can be quite lonely running a business. So it's always really, really nice to kind of get out and talk about what you do, when it's just you in your business. So yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome, and on the other side, I think it's really lovely for people to hear from other people running their businesses, so yeah, it's great.